Alright. Good evening, Sandites. Welcome to District Dialogue. We're picking back up where we left off this summer. Tonight we have a really special occasion because we have the Dream Team Counselor Group from Charles H. High School, and I am not kidding you. These ladies make it happen. And tonight they're going to talk about this thing called FAFSA, and I don't even have to know what that acronym means because they will. They're brilliant. So I'm going to shut up now and let them take the show.
Thank you, Ms. Berkey. I'm Kendra Roulette. I'm counselor for 10th. I'm the counselor for 10th through 12th graders with the last name of A to F. And I think
I'm Megan Elliott. I am 10th grade counselor. Last name's Gina O. And I'm also help with testing at the high school.
Hi, I'm Sandy Franklin. I'm the 10th through 12th grade counselor for the students whose last names begin in P through Z.
Hi, I'm Michelle Spears, and I'm the 9th to 12th grade college and career counselor.
We are going to talk to you tonight about college and FAFSA and dollars to go to college because we know that you and your students are starting to look at colleges or post-secondary technical schools. And now you're wondering, what kind of aid can we receive to help our students go to college? What kind of aid is available for college? We're going to give you a brief picture of what is available out there and how you go about procuring funds for school. The FAFSA opens October 1st. What is the FAFSA? It is a free application for federal student aid. We know that you think this is probably going to be a lot of paperwork, and there's 5 easy steps that Ms. Roulette will talk with you about later. Every parent needs to go looking at the FAFSA for their student because we know what's going to happen in the future with dollars, and any dollar helps for all this post-secondary cost. What is financial aid? Financial aid is money provided to you, the student and her parent, to help pay for the student's education. Major forms of financial aid include gift aid, grants and scholarships, and self-help aid, loans, and work study. Aid that does not need to be paid back by the student or parent will be while you're applying for the FAFSA. State grants, scholarships, federal grants, and federal work study.
So I'm going to touch on the aid that must be paid back by the student or parent. The direct subsidized loan is income-based, income-driven. The government will pay the interest while the student is still in school. Unsubsidized, the student is responsible for the interest while in college. If a child or a student chooses to defer, the interest will accrue, and you'll be responsible for that in one lump sum. Those are the federal student loans. And then we have private or alternative student loans that are not related to the FAFSA. That means you could go to a bank to get a loan to help pay for school. Also, something very important, each university has a financial aid office or a technical school or whatever school that your student goes to. Once your student decides on a school, it's important to connect with the financial aid office to see what they offer, because each, different schools offer different options for student aid. And then state grants and scholarships. Grants are almost always income-based, so that's just a good rule of thumb. Just some examples, the OTAG, you may have heard of OTAG, Oklahoma Tuition Aid Grant. It's $1,000 a year for universities or colleges, $1,300 for private universities. Oklahoma Tuition Equalization Grant, OTEG, which is family in the income can't exceed $50,000. Oklahoma's Promise, and this is a huge one. These seniors that are graduating this year, it's too late to apply for Oklahoma's Promise. You have to apply by June 30th after the sophomore year. So if you have students 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, make sure you get them signed up. It is income-based. If you did sign up your student for Oklahoma's Promise, it would be good to check with Oklahoma's Promise to make sure they are on the approved list. We have sent letters from our office to let you know about your senior, what their status is with Oklahoma's Promise. They do communicate with you guys. Make sure that you have a correct email address on file, because I think they communicate via email. But we will send letters and communicate with you throughout the year to make sure everything is on board for them to be approved at the end of the school year. And then let's see, Academic Scholars Program, those are National Merit Scholars. Other state scholarships, Future Teacher Scholarship, George and Donna Nye Public Service Scholarships, and then Regional University Baccalaureate Scholarship, that's based on GPA and ACT of 30, which is $3,000. So lots of grants and scholarships out there for our students.
All right, what federal aid is available? We have grants, federal Pell Grant, federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, Teacher Education Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, loans, which are direct subsidized loan, direct unsubsidized loan, direct plus loan, and work study. Most of these are income-based. That's why it's so important to get FAFSA in as soon as you can. Remember, FAFSA opens October 1st. How do I apply for this financial aid? FAFSA.
Which opens October 1st. We're going to say that a lot because if you get in there early, grant money, there's not an unlimited supply of grant money. And since it's income-based, the people that fill out the FAFSA first are the ones that really, they're going to be the ones that qualify for that before anybody else. So you want to make sure and fill it out as close to October 1st as you can. Also make sure that you realize you will use tax forms that you filed for last year's taxes for 2019. You filed those in April. You may have actually had the extension until June or July, but it's still those taxes is what they're looking at. So even if you don't do FAFSA until next March, you're still using the taxes that were filed for 2019. So make sure that you're aware of that. The first thing to do when you're doing the FAFSA is gather materials. Tells you right there what you need: Social Security card, driver's license, W-2 forms, tax returns, current account balances. If you have all that with you, it makes it easier to fill out the form. Then you're going to determine your dependency. Let's be real clear, almost all students are dependent. Sometimes you go, well, they don't live with us, or they live off at college. It doesn't matter, they are still dependent unless they are married or have a baby, or there are very few exceptions that allow students to claim independence. So if they are dependent, if they are with you at all, then you have to claim them, and you will have to do it, and the student has to do the FAFSA. So you're going to have to do your part. So the parent and the student both go to, and I put the website on there, it's studentaid.gov, apply for aid FAFSA, and you're going to create an FSA ID username and password. Both the parent and the student need an FSA ID to complete the FAFSA. If you're a parent that has recently gone to school and done FAFSA, then you will already have an FSA ID. So make sure, and if you have multiple students, make sure you keep your FSA ID somewhere where you won't forget it, because you're going to fill out the FAFSA every year for every student that's going to college. So kind of keep that in mind. You don't want to lose your FSA ID. After you do that, you're going to go ahead and fill out the FAFSA by applying online to FAFSA.gov. Make sure and go to that website. You should never, ever have to pay to do the FAFSA. There are tricks out there that will say, for $30, we'll do the FAFSA for you. No, it's not that difficult of a process. Please do not do that. Go to FAFSA.gov and it'll walk you through it. You're going to enter your student name and parent name as shown on Social Security cards, and you're going to send your FAFSA results to up to 10 campuses. This is important that you send it to 10 that you might go to. I'm not real sure where my daughter's going, so I may send it to 10 different campuses I think she may go to. But that way they all have the money, the money workup if you decide to go there. They will not send you stuff until you have applied and been accepted there, but they will know that if you go there, they'll already have the FAFSA for you. There's also a really cool way to, instead of having to put in everything, there is an IRS data retrieval tool at studentaid.ed.gov, and it'll teach you how to use that. But it also, I have filled out the FAFSA, it will walk you through a lot of it. It's going to transfer your tax data to the FAFSA so that you don't have to worry about it getting input wrong or whatever. It makes it more secure to connect those, and you have less chance of being flagged for review. You could still get flagged for review, but if they pull it directly from the IRS website, it helps combat that. After you fill that out, and I think the first time I did it, it took about 30 to 45 minutes. But again, you have to get the FSA ID, do the FAFSA, and that'll help you. You have to sign and submit print a copy of your answers from the summary page and review for errors, because you definitely don't want to have errors. Enter your FSA ID to serve as your electronic signature, and then don't forget to click submit at the bottom of the screen. You will need to keep track of your email and make sure that you watch it for after your student applies to a college, that then they receive their student aid report. Sometimes that won't come until next spring, so understand it may take a little bit for that to get there, but they will tell you what the cost of going to that is, what grants or student scholarships or any of that kind of stuff, and you'll receive that in your email. Sometimes they'll send out a letter via mail, but you need to make sure and check both. But both of those things will come to you, and that will help let you know what to expect from the university. And again, they've already told you this, but just remember, every university has a financial aid office that they can help you understand that stuff as well.
There are many helpful resources out there for you to go to. Of course, you can contact your student's counselor at any time, and we are very willing to help you go back to the FAFSA steps, go back to how they do university, and continue looking for emails for students. But these resources are online that you can go in and you can find specific information that might relate to your family. There's the studentaid.gov, understand aid types and loans. Of course, our goal is for your student to have grants and scholarships rather than having to do loans. But just in case, that it really helps you understand loans, how the interest is compounded, what kinds of students can have interest waived. Then there's also You Can Go To, and this is also very good one to help you plan, prepare, and pay for college, to help you understand if they don't get any money, what kinds of loans you can use, how they can maybe go to TCC before to plan and prepare for that college or technical school as well.
Another resource is okcollegestart.org. Your student will be familiar with this website. We use this website often throughout the school year during our PALS program. They have an account, and there are lots of resources on the website there that will be applicable to them for certain interests that they may have put in the website that they use. Another one is okhighered.org for information from Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education.
You can also visit the OklahomaMoneyMatters.org for a way to help them budget money for college. And they can visit the okhighered.org, OK Promise, for more information about Oklahoma's Promise.
And then last, we have local scholarships, which are not on there, but just beware, those we usually open up February 1st, and they are due March 1st. They'll get the applications from the counseling office, and we'll send out emails informing you guys about that. Please beware, we love our community, they help us so much, but it's, these are local scholarships that can help support students, for books or a couple $1,000, depending on the scholarship. But it's good to look for all sorts of other websites to find scholarships as well. And all these websites and the helpful resources will really help guide you to some good scholarship websites that you can go to and they can start applying. Students should really apply for 2 to 3 scholarships a week if they're really trying to avoid loans and get a lot of financial help going to college.
And remember, FAFSA opens October 1st.
Okay, I can't let you off the hook this quick because no, you guys did a great job, and I'm telling you, I do believe that you really are the counselor dream team. But here's my question. First of all, that was a lot of information in PowerPoint. So I'm assuming we could have that posted somewhere. So where could parents, because it's so much easier to click on a link versus trying to figure it. So where can they find the PowerPoint?
Our plan is to get that released tomorrow, and we're going to get with our IT department and make sure that we release it, and then we'll share it on social media through Facebook, and we'll try and send it out to our senior parents as well through email.
Fabulous. And the other question I have, because I don't know that, I've raised 3, and you think I have the FAFSA gig down to fine art, but truly it's super confusing to even parents that think they're pre-suit. That can be a big barrier because it is a little bit scary to go into. What do you say to kids that go, oh, Ms. Franklin, I can't do this. It's just too much. What do you say to them?
Well, usually we have a handout that has 5 easy steps for the FAFSA ID as well as the FAFSA, and we give it to them and it walks through them step by step on how to do it. And so we have those available in our office at all times for them. And then we just say, it might be, but everything that you start to look confusing, just take your time, breathe, and you can do it.
It really is overwhelming. So just one thing you guys mentioned that I think is super important because of timeline, Oklahoma Promise. That's really not for the senior or junior. So I don't know which one of you might want to maybe expand on it a little bit, because it really does target a certain age group. So you all know more than I do.
Well, we really want our students in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade to live in Oklahoma's promise. If a parent's gross income is less than $55,000, they can be approved for the program. What is cool about it is when they graduate, their income can be $100,000. So it's not like it's a deal breaker in case their parents get a raise or something in that 3 or 4 years' time. They have to follow the guidelines, and it's so easy. And if we have so many kids who are missing out on Oklahoma's promise, we are really getting a push to 9th and 10th grade this year. We need more kids on the Oklahoma promise. It's so easy. The guidelines are exactly what our Charles Page High School guidelines are to graduate. So parents, please, we've already sent one email out this year, and we're going to continue trying to send frequent emails out to please look at Oklahoma promise for their students.
So 10th grade, that's what I'm hearing, is really the trigger. So if you're a sophomore this year, your student's a sophomore this year, you really need to be thinking about that. If you could meet the income eligible requirements for that, because that is a big time bonus for kids. Can we talk a smidgen, because I have you all captured here and I don't want to waste this like expertise, but concurrent enrollment. But can we briefly talk about how that relates to college preparedness, and even maybe relates to being helpful in that financial realm? I don't know, what do you want to
Well, concurrent enrollment is pretty cool in that our kids, if they meet certain test requirements through the ACT, because we want to make sure that they are ready for that, and they have certain GPAs and they talk with their counselors, we can help get them enrolled in concurrent enrollment, and they can take up to 6 hours a semester and in the summer of their junior year. And then their senior year, they can take 18 hours, however they want to put it, and it's free tuition. You still have to pay fees and possibly books. So we always say for one class, it's going to cost your student anywhere from $80 to $170, depending on if the book is embedded or if it's got an online fee. But they're still getting a 3-hour college credit class. And we have students that will graduate with 36 hours of college credit when they graduate, because they took 6 each semester in summer, their junior year, took the 18 their senior year, and they will have paid minimal for that compared to what college would. And that, the ones that our kids take are their general education requirements, so they transfer with them to all of our local universities pretty much. We try and double check that before we let kids enroll in it as well.
So just to give you kind of an idea of cost savings for concurrent, so you're talking about $80 for a 3-hour course.
And it would cost them $450 to $500 at TTC. That doesn't even include OSU or OU.
Correct. So as a parent with a kiddo at OSU, taking a 15-hour schedule, tuition costs for a semester of 15 hours is about $6,000 at a state university. So I just think there's some great opportunity for kids to not think that there's a lot of barriers to post-secondary education when it really is feasible with a little bit of forethought. So golly, you guys are awesome. Anything else that you want to add?
Should we add the Tulsa Achieves?
Absolutely.
So students that live in Tulsa County can take advantage of Tulsa Achieves after they graduate high school, so 2 years for free. You have to maintain a 2.0 GPA, and then there's a component of community service attached to that, 20 hours a year, I think. So that's a really great resource that a lot of our students use to go to TCC for free for 2 years that live in Tulsa County.
Well, and after that, there's some transfer in scholarships to OU Tulsa that, like, if they're doing elementary education, they can transfer in, and there's different scholarships that would allow them to basically get a bachelor's for a very, very inexpensive price. So,
The other thing I would say, and help me, because I'm going to get this wrong probably, but there are agreements between Tulsa Community College, if I choose Tulsa Achieves, with say OU or OSU, so that credits can transfer. So you're not quote unquote losing coursework in that transition. Am I right about that? Yeah. Okay.
That's another thing, Ms. Durkee, about Oklahoma Promise. OU, OSU, Northeastern, they're all coming up with additional funds for kids who are on Oklahoma's Promise to give them additional money. And so we just continue to encourage that. And finally, we have the Accelerated Independence for Tulsa Technology Center for kids who have found they want to do a career and they can just go to a career. That is the 13th year scholarship. And they also have to have the FAFSA for the Accelerated Independence Scholarship as well.
Tulsa Tech is where a lot of our kids really don't realize they want to go there until after they're in their senior year of high school, and being able that's where Michelle's working with them a lot on the career and
Well,
pathway.
you're talking about really viable, self-supporting careers when they get out. So sometimes we see college as kind of an end-all, be-all place. But the truth is our Tulsa Tech students do really well in the fields they choose from the standpoint of being self-sufficient when they grow up and kind of enter the real world that we're all in. So great information. You guys literally are a wealth of information. So I'm hoping the folks out there have listened carefully. This is a lot of lingo and kind of edu-speak with a lot of information that you've been barraged with. I see we have 16 people online. I hope you 16 people share with another 16 and so on and so on. It's really important to get the information out. And then, of course, the best place to go to the source to find out more or clarification is these ways. So, best way for a parent to contact you guys.
Email.
So that would be first name, last name at standites.org. So anything else that you guys would like to add? You're amazing.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Yeah, I appreciate it. So as much as they would like to stay for the portion, I think they're gonna exit left and go have dinner with their families, hopefully, and do some TV time. I don't know what you people did.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so our next shift, you guys, if you'll stick with us, we're all gonna kind of dive into our health guidance. So we have a whole new crew of people, so it's a little bit unique tonight with how we're kind of capturing the subject tonight. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time this evening talking through kind of what we've learned in the COVID world and our health guidance. We are now in week 5. Who would have thought that already? And I believe there's 2 more weeks until fall break. So that's coming down the horizon, it's in the horizon pretty quickly. So I actually have Stan Trout, Mr. Trout from Charles Page High School. He's our STEAM principal. And then Janelle Wright, one of our school nurses, has joined us tonight. And I just want to kind of talk about where we've been the last 4 weeks, how it's been going, direct you to some information that has recently been posted on our website. And so Tina Moses is with us. She's kind of running the show here. She's given us the peace sign with the slideshow, but I do want to direct you to the website. So Tina, is there a possibility we can show off the website just a little bit? Clearly, we can't show off the website without giving Tina a lot of kudos for the setup. But you noticed when she went, you haven't noticed that yet because we don't have you up and running. So
Sorry. I had to open the tab.
There you go. Fantastic. So Ms. Moses just opened up the website, and what you notice is a pop-up window that has some information that we want to make sure people see. So it pops up because we're saying, look at it, look at me. But the most current thing that we've added to this pop-up window is the district COVID-19 data. And I want to do a little bit of an explanation with this data. First of all, we post the current data on Monday morning. And basically it's a representation of current data from the previous week. And so we calculate that on Fridays. It takes us,
Sorry, it's sharing the wrong tab. 1 second.
that's all right.
There we go.
Oh, here we go. So here is the data that was posted on Monday morning, and this represents Friday, September 18th, real time as of Friday afternoon. And just a couple things, we've broken it down by site, so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on at the site your students go to school. We're trying to be very clear and transparent. But then the other thing I love about it is at the bottom in green, we show the percentage of current positive cases and the percentage of active quarantines and isolation. And I'm going to briefly describe what we're talking about. When we say current cases, we're talking about those people, both students and staff, that we know are currently positive for COVID-19. You can see last week our total positive across the district of 5,367 folks at our sites was 11, which is really about 1/5 of 1%, so a very small percentage. And then our active quarantines and isolations, those are folks that either are quarantined because of an exposure or are isolated because they are an active case. And as of last Friday, we had 162 active quarantines and isolation. Now, I have to say, some of it's due to contact tracing, and some of that's due to a self-report. And so I think one of the big things that we need to say tonight is thank you to our parents for helping us. I know we're getting phone calls, not daily, but probably pretty close to daily, of people that are trying to keep ourselves healthy and keep us from being exposed so we can keep the doors open. So, Ms. Tina, I'm gonna let you take it back to our screen. Janelle, if we could just start with you a little bit and talk about the data and how our team meets pretty frequently to talk about what we're seeing in trends, and maybe even kind of talk about our leadership team meeting today in regard to using the data to alter maybe some things that we do. So maybe take us through kind of the thought process behind number one at CDC, but then how we're using the data to drive decisions.
Right, okay, we do CDC guidelines for sure. We get phone calls from parents, self-reporting. We have several forms and spreadsheets that we will enter our data into. We ask for things like when symptoms began, and that's what we base our quarantine and isolation dates off of.
I mean, that about, sizes up really. Then the next thing that you have to do once we get a positive case, a phone call that we've identified as positive, what must you do?
What must we do? Well, if we have a positive phone call, we report that to this health department, the health department. We are in contact with them and start our contact tracing.
And so Mr. Trout's kind of firsthand experience with kind of doing the thing at Charles Page High School and really intuition with Freshman Academy as well. And so I'd just like for you to expand on kind of some of the thought process that goes behind it, the kind of work it takes.
You bet. So the first thing that we do is when one of our two school nurses contacts us and tells us about an active case or a student who's quarantined, and that's one student who's quarantined because of a positive case at home, is fairly simple, because at that point, only that student who's in close contact with a family member has to be quarantined. And again, we're very grateful for the families who self-report this information to us. That's incredibly helpful. More impactful is when we get the message that we actually have a student with a positive case who was positive at Charles Page High School, Freshman Academy, or any of our other sites. At that point, we have to do contact tracing. We have to find out with as much certainty as we can how many students and exactly which students were in close contact, as defined as within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes with that student while they were actively had COVID-19. And those students, according to CDC guidelines, need to be quarantined for 14 days. And that's 14 calendar days. And that is the incubation, that's the maximum length of the incubation period for COVID-19. And that gets us to that point where that student is safe so that we know that they're not going to get sick, and B, that they will not infect other students unknowingly while they have the disease. So we do contact tracing in great detail. Our teachers have done a magnificent job of uploading their seating charts and their lab arrangements and the way that they run practices, if they're extracurricular activities and such like that, so that we know exactly who was in contact for more than 15 minutes within 6 feet of the symptomatic student, of the student who tested positive while they were at school. That's a pretty detailed process. So we have a great deal of pencil paper information. We have all of our teachers' seating charts online, but we also do a contact tracing interview with the teachers. We don't want to just cast this wide net, say everybody in the class is quarantined. That's unfair to everyone and not necessary. So we conduct a contact tracing interview with the teachers and find out what was happening in class that day, who was interacting with whom, where they were sitting, were masks very importantly, wear masks in use at all times and that sort of stuff, so that we make sure that we get everyone who needs to be quarantined, who may be at risk of COVID-19, and also to not unnecessarily quarantine students who don't need to be. At that point, after we've identified the group of students who need to be quarantined, we start looking at education. We start looking at how this is going to affect these students in the classroom, or more accurately at home while they're accessing the classroom through distance learning. The counselors who were just here, our teachers have done a magnificent job of making sure that our kids are held harmless as much as possible through this process. And typically with 14 days, and oftentimes there's a lag in reporting and a lag in testing, so oftentimes it's not even 14 calendar days. Sometimes we've had students who've been quarantined for as little as 2 or 3 school days. And in all of the cases and most of our kids who have been quarantined are back now. Most of them have been able to come back with very, very little difficulty. It's been very seamless bringing them back into the classroom. And we've been very appreciative of the kids and the parents who've been very understanding about quarantine to this point.
It is tricky, and I know it's called the infectious period, that period where you could actually shed virus and it would create a problem potentially for a close neighbor. So one of the questions, maybe this is a Janelle question, is that idea of before I show symptoms, research is saying you're infectious 2 days prior to. So that's where it gets a little tricky in that we might have a positive case. So the questioning involves when. So Janelle, do you mind expanding on that just a little bit?
Sure, when we're talking to parents, we want to know when did symptoms begin, because like the surgeon said, they could possibly be infectious up to 2 days before those symptoms begin. So that's what we base our numbers and our quarantine days off of, is when those symptoms begin. If we have a positive case, they are isolated for 10 days according to CDC, but it's not always 10 days. That could be dependent on their symptoms. So if they're having symptoms still 12 or 13 days out, then they're still going to be required to stay home and finish their isolation until their symptoms have improved, fever-free for 24 hours. So there are guidelines they have to meet before they can come back from isolation.
Honestly, been really proud of our kids. I think one of the confusing components, you mentioned mask wearing, and I'm going to brag a little bit, really district-wide on our students and teachers too, but just their willingness, and I'm going to let it in. Actually, Mr. Wise at the high school set up some interviews with kids about how they feel about mask wearing. And while it might not be everybody's favorite, it certainly is something that our kids are understanding. And I mean, from the little kids, the little babies, to the ones that already think they're grown up, that are seniors in high school. So that's been amazing. I think one of the confusing things is people think mask wearing would take the place of quarantine. And you have to think of it in terms of layered protections. And so while masks protect us from getting sick and we're keeping each other safe, it doesn't negate the necessity of quarantine. And Janelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's per CDC guidelines.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
And so that gets a little bit confusing for people. Right now we're pulling together data, a little bit longer time to see the data happen, but we actually have segregated data that shows those that are in required quarantine. A lot of those quarantines are not getting sick. In fact, I think we have one noted case of a student who has been required to quarantine that came back with a positive case of COVID. So that's very good data. I suspect partially it's because we've got the mask on, and it keeps us healthy. So that's a good thing. I do want to clarify, I know it's a little bit easier to contact trace when you have seating arrangements at secondary level. So that would be happening probably at Clyde Boyd Middle School more often than not, and then Charles Page. Janelle, can you talk a little bit, because I know you serve as kind of nurse in charge in a couple of our elementary schools, right, where we have had a positive case in the classroom and we're quarantining a whole class. So can you talk a little bit about kind of why, the thought process behind that?
Sure. At the elementary level, we are not requiring, again, for CDC guidelines, kindergarten through third graders to wear masks.
And they're a little bit harder to keep in seats all day. They do different activities, so it's a little bit harder to keep them separated. You don't really know who's been within 6 feet and for how long at that level. So that's why we're quarantining whole classrooms at those grades.
And there's a possibility we could start to utilize some of the data from the quarantines that we've enacted to drive decisions about is it possible to contact trace in those elementary classrooms, and maybe we'll get to a place where we feel more comfortable and confident in the ability to do that. So here's a question, I'll put you on the spot, Mr.
Okay.
Pratt. I want to know since August 24th, which is the day we started school, what is it that you've learned about contact tracing? Because all of us had the course. We took the
Sure.
John Hopkins
Absolutely.
course. So what are your takeaways? What have you learned so far?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for requiring us to do that Johns Hopkins course. I'm like everything else, when that was assigned to me, I was just like, oh my goodness, when am I going to get 8 hours to watch this? But it was a great experience for me, and I have so much more confidence in making determinations, the kind of determinations that we never want to have to make with students. But I have learned the difference between isolation and quarantine. You isolate active cases and you quarantine close contacts. I've learned that. I have learned so much more about our parents and so much more about our students and the concerns that they have about their kids being in school. And it's very heartening to know just how passionate our community is about having their kids in school, and been very, very appreciative of that. We have also learned, I think all of us have learned how to be much more clear and concise and precise about the language that we use when we talk to parents. In addition, I'm sure some of the parents listening have gotten that, in addition to the specific phone call that you get saying, regrettably, we have to quarantine your student, and here are the dates, and here's how we'll accommodate them in the classroom. You also get the email that's the notification that there's an active case at Charles H. High School or at Clyde Boyd or whatever school like that. And somewhere in that email, it mentions the word quarantine. And that, as it turns out, was a big mistake. Maybe not a mistake, but just sort of should have made it more clear. This does not mean that your student was quarantined. This means that there is an active case, and those students who are quarantined have already been contacted. So
That is a great point, because I was at the foundation board meeting today, and I had a question from a board member who also is a parent, and the question was, I kind of freaked out a little bit, because I got the letter, and I thought, oh my gosh, and I said, no. If you've got the letter, we've already done our job. We're just in all transparency letting you know. And so that's a great point, maybe, a language change, but I think the more people understand the process and kind of understand how that's working, maybe it's a little bit clearer and doesn't feel so scary to get that letter. That's a great point.
another thing that I would add, and Tina Moses is over here manning the camera and the keyboard and all that sort of stuff, is our district did a really, really good job going back to our very scrambling, hurried experience back in the spring when we had to close the doors, all the way up in the tech tools that are necessary to have our kids be successful in the classroom while they're not in the classroom. So everyone from district administration who had the vision, to our IT department who gave us the tools, and especially to our teachers who have been magnificent at putting their content online on Google Classroom so that our students who are at home can access learning and be as successful as we can possibly make it for them while they're at home. So that's been a huge thing. None of this would work if we were just sending kids home and they were sitting there playing video games or flipping nickels, whatever else they do.
So here's that on for you. So you mentioned the John Hopkins course, which I know was an experience, and a long one, by the way. You mentioned that, but hearing the course, it's kind of like you hear the theory, but until you practice it, you're really not the expert on it. And so how has your experience led to maybe some changes in practices? And I'm thinking kind of in the first hour or 6th hour piece.
Right.
It led to some changes in practices because we get experience and we learn more.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think that one of the things that we learned very early on is that extracurricular activities are tough.
Right.
Because in sports practices, in band, in choir, where students have to be masked, unmasked, and they have to be performing, they have to be projecting, they have to be in close contact, a single active case can be very challenging to deal with in that sense. We've been very fortunate in that, and all of our athletic teams are out there competing. And I would add, they are competing very, very successfully out there in the world. Our band is playing. They performed Friday night. It was beautiful. Our choir is singing. All that stuff is happening. But the extracurriculars are very, very challenging for us. And it has led to some changes. Like, for instance, our wrestling coach has a limited number of students wrestling each other, rather than the old style of wrestling practice where every kid would mill around and they would wrestle every kid in the room. Now they're very small groups, isolated, so that they're not infecting everyone in the room. That may not sound like a big deal, but in this world, it's a huge thing for us. Requiring first hour weights, requiring kids who are not actively lifting. We don't want kids wearing a mask when they're actively straining themselves, putting cardiovascular exertion on themselves. But if they're not actively lifting or running or something like that, they're still masked. So little things like that we've learned. We've also learned in the contact tracing, rather than just casting the wide net, to actually do the interview and go that next step and make sure that we're only touching those kids who are at risk.
Right.
And so I think we've gotten to be much more precise in our practices.
So what you're describing is kind of creating a cohort in those large classes, cohort groups of kids, much like we do in elementary. We call our third grade classes are cohorted. So we're really only affecting one class, which is really smart. And that's something that experience had to teach you. So I think the longer we go through this problem, this pandemic that we have, I think we get smarter. And we tackled it. That's what I love about our leadership team, about our teachers, about our support staff, is we see a problem and we capture a way to tackle it. We put our heads together and we figure it out. And it's certainly not without a ton of support with our community. One of the things I heard earlier said this morning in leadership was parents don't like getting that phone call, but they've been really understanding about getting the phone call. And so that really speaks highly of our community of patrons and our community of parents that really do have the best interest of the educational programs in their heart and understand how important it is to keep the school doors open. So I don't think that we've second guessed our decision. I think it was a little bit unnerving to launch into the year and get it started, but as we've learned more, we've become smarter. I'm so proud of our team.
I think at first it was really shocking to be around that many people, because we had all been quarantined for so long, and back during the spring when restaurants weren't open and all that sort of stuff was happening, we got sort of used to being alone. So that the first couple of weeks of school with 1,500 kids and 120 adults in front, it was sort of shocking to the senses. But I've definitely noticed in the last week or so that things have started to feel a lot more normal. The kids are getting really used to wearing their masks. It's part of their school equipment. It's part of what they do. Grab a backpack, put on your mask, and off you go to school. The teachers have been tremendous about it, and I'm really thrilled. I mean, we're still in school, and I think we're going stronger now than we were in the first week.
I agree. This is going to sound really silly, but I felt like there was a degree of kind of relearning social skills with kids and people. And I know that sounds very goofy, but from a standpoint of even adults, because I talked personally to some people that really had not been out of their house since March. And so if you go, I mean, we talk about the learning gap of 5 months, but there's also a social learning gap that was happening at 5 months. And I think that there was kind of this, I'm interacting with people again, and how does that work, and what I'm supposed to, so that's been really good, I think, and healthy psychologically for people. I think we're gonna have time to show the whole video. It's 4 minutes. And so we're gonna end with this video that Mr. Wise put together, and he interviewed some kids at Charles, but he didn't. I don't know who the kids were.
They interviewed each other.
Yes.
They were part of the yearbook staff.
Oh, yearbook, okay. So the yearbook staff took the time to interview. So let's take the video back to the beginning. And I want you to see, you're gonna see kids that some are, you know, fine, and others are going, I don't really like this gig. But you'll see how it's become what they have to do to have the normalcy of school. And so I really love the video. So I want to share. I hope they posted it on the page, on Facebook. So it's really good. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Gina. I'm here with my friend Sebastian. Sebastian, what grade are you in?
I'm in 12th grade.
Alrighty, I'm going to be asking Sebastian some questions about returning to school with the new guidelines and everything. Are you ready?
Yep.
Alrighty, let's begin. When Sam Springs announced that masks were mandated at school, what was your initial reaction?
I mean, I just kind of agree with it because there's a lot of reasons why we have masks.
Alrighty, so leading me to my next question, you said you were glad that masks were mandatory?
Yes, because a lot of people are around, you know, their grandparents and, you know, they're more prone to getting this. And yeah, so basically, you know, we have to protect those people as well.
Alright, and what is one way that you've been staying positive through all of the new guidelines and changes here at school?
Honestly, I just wear it and just agree with the rules.
Alright. And so you have adjusted to wearing your mask at school?
Yeah, I wear it at work, so it helps a lot with having to wear it here.
Alrighty, and out of the 3 options that our district has offered for schooling, why did you choose this first?
Because I like being around people, and I feel like a lot of people need positivity here, and we're filled with a lot of negativity, and so we just need a lot of people here to bring positivity out of the masks.
Absolutely, and how would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Strict, lax, very strict?
It's pretty strict, but for good reasons.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm here with my friend.
I'm Caleb.
So what grade are you in, Caleb?
I'm a junior. I'm in 11th grade.
Alright. So I'm gonna ask Caleb some questions about returning to school during new times. You ready?
Yeah.
Alright, so when Sand Springs announced that masks were mandated at school, what was your initial reaction?
My first reaction was like how school officials are going to make students wear and keep their masks on throughout the day. But from what I've seen these first 4 weeks, they've done a really good job.
So are you glad masks are mandatory?
I am pretty glad masks are mandatory because not only does it keep the health of the students in mind, it keeps in mind the health of the students' families. You know, whether they live with a grandparent or an older guardian, you know, without them getting sick wearing masks, you know, not only save the students' life, but save theirs too.
So what is one way you're staying positive at school with all the health concerns and new guidelines?
You know, one way I'm staying positive is, you know, looking forward to athletic events. You know, you playing soccer, me playing basketball. Just looking forward to like Friday nights for football games and, you know, going to practice and stuff. Just keeping a positive attitude that you're going to have a season is, you know, going to keep you going this year.
Yeah. Alright, so how have you adjusted to wearing a mask at school?
It's actually been a pretty smooth adjustment for me. You know, I'll just put it on in the morning and then wear it until I go to lunch. And sometimes I just forget I even have it on.
So out of the 3 learning options offered by Sand Springs schools, why did you choose the in-person model?
I chose the in-person model because of the teachers at Sand Springs. You know, at Charles Page, you have great teachers, you know, great math teachers, great English teachers, and I thought that was the only way I was going to thoroughly grasp the subject is coming in person.
So how would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Strict, somewhat strict, or lax?
I'd say strict, and not strict in a bad way, strict, but they want to keep everyone safe, you know, keep everyone safe. Don't let anybody get sick, and don't make our school, you know, go to virtual, you know, keep us in person and keep us learning with our teachers.
Alright, well, thanks, Cal.
Appreciate it.
Gina, I'm here with my friend Jude. Jude, what grade are you in? I'm a freshman. Alrighty, so I'm going to be asking Jude some questions about returning to school with the new mandates and guidelines. Are you ready? Alright, let's begin. When Sand Springs announced that masks were mandated at school, what was your initial response?
I was nervous
Why were you nervous?
because I really didn't want to wear a mask.
Alrighty, and so for my next question, are you glad that masks are mandatory?
No,
Alright, how come?
I'd rather not wear a mask.
Alright, and what is one way that you've been staying positive through having to wear a mask with all the new guidelines at school?
I just like seeing my friends.
Alright, and have you adjusted to wearing a mask well?
Yeah.
Alright, and out of the 3 learning options, why did you choose our in-person option for learning?
Sorry, this is my friends.
Alrighty, and for my last question, how would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Strict, lax, very strict?
Kind of strict.
Alright, why would you describe it like that?
Because teachers are always honest about wearing their masks and stuff like that.
Alright, right, thank you so much. You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm here with my friend
Cole,
What grade are you in, Cole?
I'm a senior in 12th grade.
Alright, I'm gonna have Cole some questions about returning to school during these new times. Ready?
Yes.
Alright, two. So when Sand Springs announced that masks were mandated at schools, what was your initial reaction?
When I heard that they were mandated, I was very glad because I feel like they do a lot.
Well, alright, so what is one way you're staying positive at school with all the health concerns that we've got?
I would really say my production 2 class is helping me because they're a fun group of people and they make me smile.
So how have you adjusted to wearing a mask at school?
I already have been wearing one for work, so one thing that I just kind of adjusted to would probably have potty kits in my mouth area.
Alright, so out of the 3 learning options offered by Sand Springs Schools, why did you choose the in-person?
I feel like I learned better in that one.
Alright, so how would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Strict, somewhat strict, or what?
I'm gonna say somewhat strict. It can definitely be a little more strict on the nose thing. I see a lot of people doing the whole under their nose thing, and I think that doesn't help.
Thanks, Cole.
No problem.
Hi, my name's Gina, and I'm here with my friend Natalie. Natalie, what grade are you in? I'm in the 11th grade. Alrighty, I'm going to be asking Natalie some questions about the returning to school during these unique times. Are you ready? Yes. Alrighty, let's begin. When Sand Springs announced that masks were mandated at school, what was your initial reaction? I definitely thought that it was going to be a challenge. Everyone has to live in, you've got to figure out how we're going to eat with them, how we're going to sleep with them, how we're going to do all that stuff. But I was glad. We're helping people, we're helping to spread. I think that it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. Alrighty, and that leads me to my next question. You said that you were glad that masks were mandated? Absolutely, yes. I think that we need to be doing something, proactive. Yes. Alright, what is one way that you can stay positive at school with all of these new guidelines? I'm in band, and, obviously a ton of things have changed. We can't do anything that we normally do, but also, being here at all. We actually get to come to school, we get to be around our friends, yeah, it's not the same, but, take what you can get. We're still doing something. Alright. And have you adjusted to wearing your mask at school? Yeah, at first it was a little weird, just because the facial expressions and whatnot. But it really isn't that hard to do, Alright, and out of the 3 learning options, you've mentioned this a little bit, but why have you chose the in-person option? I definitely think that I can always wear my mask, it doesn't bother me. I don't have any health reasons that I couldn't do that. Also, I like being with my friends. I like being interactive. I learn better in person, and I was totally fine with following all the guidelines, so I decided that it was probably best for me to come. Alrighty, and for my last question, how would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Strict, lax, very strict? I would say it's fairly strict. I remember the first day that I came in with a couple of friends, and we were walking outside, and one of my friends had their mask pulled down. And the second we walked in, the teacher came in, and he was like, "Put your mask on." But I was kind of glad. I was like, "Yeah, thanks for reminding us." And honestly, I don't see a lot of people not wearing their masks. It's really impressive. Alright, well, thank you so much for answering these questions. No
My
worries.
name's Jack. I'm here with my friend Jackson. So what grade are you in?
10th grade.
Alright, I'm gonna ask Jackson some questions about returning to school during these unique times. You ready?
Yup.
So when Sand Springs announced that masks were mandated at school, what was your initial reaction?
I mainly expected it because everybody else was doing it, so I was just ready to go.
Alright. Are you glad masks are mandatory?
Yes, because I feel like it's preventing kids from getting corona, so I feel like it's helped a lot.
What is one way you're staying positive at school with all the health concerns you've got?
One way is I'm just glad that I don't have it, and glad that my friends, I haven't given it to anybody, so that's one way I try to stay positive through it.
Have you adjusted to wearing a mask at school?
Yeah, sometimes I go up to my car with it on because I just forget because it's so normal.
So out of the 3 learning options offered by Sand Springs School, why did you choose the in-person one?
I chose in person because I just felt like it would have been better to connect with the teacher and just not do it from home. I felt like I would have struggled more at home than here. So,
How would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Strict, somewhat strict, or lax?
I'd say it's pretty strict because there'll be sometimes that my mask will fall down my nose and they'll tell me to pull it back up. So I'd say it's pretty strict.
Hi, my name is Gina, and I'm here with my friend Madison. And Madison, what grade are you in? Alrighty, so I'm going to be asking Madison some questions about the returning to school with the unique times that we're having right now. Are you ready? Yes. Alright, let's begin. When Sam Springs announced that masks were mandated at school, what was your initial reaction?
I wasn't very excited. I was honestly really surprised.
Alrighty, are you glad that masks are mandatory?
Not really.
How come?
I don't like being able to see others around me. I don't like being able to not see their face.
I completely agree. What is one way that you've been staying positive through all of these crazy times and the new concerns and guidelines?
Honestly, just remembering that eventually everything will go back to normal and that the process of masks and everyone correctly wearing them will help us get through it faster.
Absolutely. And have you adjusted well to wearing a mask at school?
Yes.
Alright. Out of the 3 learning options, why did you choose the in-school model?
Just because it's more experience in high school and seeing friends.
Alright, and last question, how would you describe the enforcement of the mask mandate? Somewhat strict, very strict, or lax?
Somewhat strict, I think.
Alright, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So there you go. I don't know, maybe you guys love our students. I just love our students.
They're great kids.
All of them. I mean, regardless, and they're adapting really well. So I don't know if you have other comments that you want to add before we close out. I know we've taken a little bit longer tonight, but I thought it was important to hear both kind of themes that we had going tonight, and definitely give you a chance to get the last word in for sure.
I would say one thing in closing, and that is, we know this is not ideal. We know that the situation as school is right now is not all the way back to normal, but it is as close back to normal as we can do, given the circumstances, given the guidelines of the CDC. And as you can see, I think our kids are flourishing, and they are definitely glad to be in school. And it is not something we do lightly to have kids wear masks or have kids go home on quarantine, but it is the thing that we need to do to keep the doors open, which is our highest priority.
Absolutely.
I agree with Mr. Trout, and just thank you to the parents. Everyone I've spoken to has just, they've been so nice, and thank you for showing us grace and getting us through this time, and concerns for not only your students, but for us as well. We appreciate you letting us know, and keeping them home, just to keep everybody safe. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Mr. Trout, that's right. Thank you for staying and doing this with us. And of course, Ms. Moses that's here constantly for peacetime. We're going to try to do this once a month, Sandite. So we'll have different topics, probably have a few elementary folks in and talk about the same thing, and then splatter in a little bit of, fun news and kind of need to know type things. So thank you for joining us tonight. This will continue to be on our Sandite Learning YouTube channel for you to view and watch later, or just kind of spread the word and let people know it's out there. So you guys have a good evening. We will see you next time.